The ballroom shimmered under the glow of 1,000 candles, each flickering against the backdrop of opulent chandeliers. The air was thick with anticipation as nobles murmured and exchanged glances. At the center of it all stood a girl with fiery determination in her eyes, her crimson dress a bold statement amidst a sea of muted pastels. She held her head high, exuding confidence that dared anyone to challenge her. Her lips curled into a knowing smirk as she raised a glass. "To my downfall," she said, her voice dripping with defiance, "and the legacy I will leave behind." But what kind of person toasts their own demise? She wasn't always this commanding presence. Once she had been a quiet observer, overshadowed by the brilliance of others. In a world where perfection and decorum were prized, she had always been an outsider, someone who knew too much and yet remained unnoticed. Her position in the noble hierarchy wasn't enough to grant her security. She was surrounded by snakes in silk and wolves in powdered wigs, and at the pinnacle of society, the crown princess shone brightest, a rival so perfect that standing in her shadow felt inevitable. But what do you do when you realize you'll never be the hero of your own story? It happened on a fateful afternoon, during an elaborate garden party meant to celebrate the princess's achievements. As always, the girl lingered on the edges, content to avoid the limelight. But then she overheard whispers, poisonous words that cut deep. "She'll never amount to anything. She's nothing more than a footnote in history." The words stung more than she cared to admit. It wasn't just that she'd never be the hero. She wasn't even considered worthy of being a minor character. That's when she made her decision. If the world wanted a villain, she would give them one. Not a cackling caricature, but a cunning mastermind who would etch her name in history. But was she truly ready to sacrifice everything to rise above the heroes? Her transformation began that very night. She pored over every book in the family library, from strategy manuals to tales of great rulers who shaped empires. If she couldn't be loved, she would be feared. In public, she adopted the persona of a perfect noble, graceful, polite, and unshakable. But behind closed doors, she built alliances in the shadows, whispering promises into the ears of those who felt overlooked. Servants, minor nobles, and merchants, all underestimated by the elites, became her network. It wasn't long before her name began to circulate in hushed tones. She was no longer just that girl. She was someone to be watched, someone to be feared. But how far could she push before the delicate balance of power crumbled? Her newfound presence didn't go unnoticed by the princess. One day, during a lavish ball, the two crossed paths on the grand staircase. The princess, as radiant as ever, offered her a smile so sweet it could only be laced with venom. "Trying to rise above your station?" the princess asked, her tone as sharp as a blade. The girl returned the smile with one of her own. "I'm simply carving my place in history. Heroes need villains, don't they?" It was the first time she had openly challenged the crown princess, and it sent shockwaves through the room. But even as their rivalry deepened, she couldn't ignore the flicker of respect in the princess's eyes. Was the princess an obstacle to be eliminated, or a worthy adversary in the game of power? As months passed, the girl's influence grew. Every move she made seemed to shift the balance of power in the kingdom. But with each step forward, the stakes rose higher. Whispers of rebellion began to swirl, and even the royal court couldn't ignore the tension building within the noble ranks. Then came the grand banquet, a stage she had carefully orchestrated. As she entered the hall, all eyes turned to her. The girl who had once been invisible now commanded the room without saying a word. She approached the king, her head held high. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice steady, "I believe it's time we discuss the future of this kingdom." The room fell silent. The king's response would either cement her rise or lead to her downfall. But even in this moment of triumph, doubt lingered in her mind. Was she truly in control, or was she just another pawn in a larger game? And as she locked eyes with the princess across the room, she wondered what secrets lay behind that perfect facade. "Tell me," she thought to herself, "are we really so different, you and I? Would she remain the villain in this story, or was there a chance she could rewrite her role entirely?" As the banquet unfolded, the girl stood at the precipice of her grand plan. The pieces were all in place, the board set for her ultimate move. But as she raised her glass to toast, she couldn't help but wonder, would history remember her as the villain she sought to become, or as something far greater? And more importantly, could she live with the consequences of her choices? This story is far from over, and the next chapter promises to unravel secrets that will leave you questioning everything. Subscribe to Annie Analyze so you don't miss what happens next in this thrilling tale of ambition, rivalry, and destiny.